Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about inferencing in stories. Our standard is RI 5.1, and it says, quote accurately from a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. Our learning target is I can refer to details in the text when making inferences from the text. So this week we're going to look at the second part of the standard, whereas last week we looked at the first part of the standard. So you already know how to make a good guess based on evidence. That's what we talked about last week. So here's an example. Janet arrived at her office. She emailed the teachers the times for special meetings for the week. After school began, she went to visit classrooms and see how the students were doing in class. Her main goal was to make sure the school ran smoothly. So from what you read, what is Janet's job? Well, I'm going to guess that Janet is a principal because the text states her main goal was to make sure the school ran smoothly. And we know that principal's main job is to make sure the school runs smoothly. Here's another example. John arrived after school was over. He told the boys to hurry to the field and begin to stretch. Then they ran 2 miles of laps. Afterwards, they began to practice their passes. John made the boys practice for 2 hours. So, what is John's job? Well, I'm going to guess that John's job is probably a football coach because the text states that he went to the field, they began to stretch, they practiced their passes, and they practiced for about 2 hours. Sometimes authors will directly tell you information, and this is what we talked about last week. So here's the question. Where was Tyler going on his summer vacation? Tyler was so excited. Him and his parents were leaving on a cruise on his summer vacation. This is the first time he'd ever been on a cruise. Their ship was headed for Catalina Island. He was already planning all the activities he was going to do when he arrived at the island. He knew he was going to have a blast. So using this, you can see that the author is directly telling you the information to this question. We know that Tyler and his parents are going on a cruise. However, sometimes authors will not directly tell you information. So here's the question. Why did Tyler and his family choose a cruise for their vacation? Same reading. Tyler was so excited. Him and his parents were leaving on a cruise on his summer vacation. This is the first time he's ever been on a cruise. Their ship was heading for the Catalina Island. He was already planning all the activities he was going to do when he arrived at the island. He knew he was going to have a blast. So now the author doesn't tell us why Tyler and his family chose the cruise for vacation. So sometimes the authors are not going to directly tell you, and you're going to have to make an inference. Some authors will not answer why, who, where, and what question. Why did this person do this? Who did that? What happened? And why did it happen? When you are asked a question and the answer is not directly found in the text, you make an inference or a good guess. So inference is a good guess. So inference, once again, the definition, a good guess based on evidence in the text and what you already know. So Miss Smith, Joe's teacher, had assigned fraction math problems for homework the night before. She asked everyone to pass in their homework. Joe's neighbor noticed he didn't have any homework to pass in. Suddenly, Miss Smith announces pop quiz. Joe felt his heart sink. While his teacher wasn't looking, he peeked at his math notes in his desk. His neighbor saw what he was doing, and Joe said to him, "Shh, don't say anything." So now we have to look at why did Joe cheat on the quiz? So you can see what's underlined already in the text evidence. Joe didn't do his math homework. Now we're going to use what I know. So your prior knowledge or background knowledge. So I usually don't do as well on a math quiz if I don't do all my homework. So using what you read and what you know, you're going to make an inference. So this inference is Joe cheated because he didn't do his homework and study. So which is an example of an inference? I'm going to read this reading and then we're going to decide if it's A or B. Jake couldn't wait to bring his present to the mission. The gift was for another boy his age. His present was round and rough on the outside. It was an orange color, and he practiced outside with it real quick before he put it in the box. So which one do you think is an inference, a good guess? Is it where is Jake bringing the present? Jake is bringing his present to the mission. Or B, what is the present? Jake's present is a basketball. The correct answer is B. What is the present? I know choice B is an example of an inference because there was no evidence in the text that directly answered that question. So a good guess was made, and the guess was that the present was probably a basketball based on the evidence. So it's important to be able to refer to details in the text when making inferences because, number one, so you can determine the answer to a question you have that may not be directly answered in the text. And number two, it may help you understand why events unfold a certain way in the story. So now we're going to look at this skill, and it has three things you need to do. First, you need to identify text evidence and what you know. Then you're going to make an inference, and then you're going to write your inference in paragraph form. So this reading says, a cat showed up one day at the Rogers' front door. They were worried he had been abandoned. They let him inside the house and named him Fuzzy. He purred and jumped in everyone's lap. He loved for the kids to pick him up and sit with him. The family tried to play games with him by throwing a stuffed toy for him, and he would run and chase it. They decided they would take him with them in the car when they went to the store. He relaxed in the back seat and enjoyed the ride. He was the most relaxed cat they have ever seen. So what can we infer about Fuzzy's life before he arrived at the Rogers' front door? So they've already underlined the text evidence, so we know he purred and jumped in everyone's lap. He loved to be picked up. He would chase toys they would throw, and he relaxed in the backseat of the car. So now using that evidence and what I know cats are usually only tame if they had already been around humans. So using these two things, my inference is going to be Fuzzy had a home with other people before he arrived at the Rogers' front door. Now what I'm going to do is use these three, what I read, what I know, to make an inference, and I'm going to write it in paragraph form. So I infer that Fuzzy had a home with other people before he arrived at the Rogers' front door. Right after Fuzzy arrived, the text states he purred and jumped in everyone's lap. He loved to be picked up. He would even chase toys that the family would throw for him. When they took him for a car ride, he relaxed in the backseat of the car. I know cats are usually only tame if they have already been around humans. So that's why I think Fuzzy had a home before he arrived at the Rogers. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to play a video for you that shows the example of making inferences.
All right, you guys, pull over. That's the bank's money right there. I caught you red-handed. You're going to spend a long time behind bars.
Cut! They're not going to jail. That's not in the script.
Are you serious?
Check it out. First, you leap onto their car and yell, "All right, you guys, pull over." And then you say, "That's the bank's money right there." Then I caught you red-handed. Then nothing. See, there is no line about spending time behind bars.
I guess I made an inference. I mean, look. The alarm is going off at the bank. They're running from the police. and they have bags of cash from the bank in the car. I made an inference that they were going to jail because of what they did.
You made an inference? What on earth are you talking about?
Well, I read the text. I thought about what I know, and so I made an inference.
Oh, now I get it. Of course. In real life, they'd have to be arrested and charged. And there'd be a trial and lawyers. And before we knew for sure, they were going to jail.
What if I say, you guys are going to need a good lawyer?
Yes, that works for me.
All right, everyone. We'll do it again.
Okay, so that was just an example of making inferences. So once again, making inferences. You use the information from the text plus background knowledge to infer. You figure out something about the text that the author did not tell you. You use evidence from the text that you read plus what you already know. So these are some good sentence starters when you're making inferences. This could mean I infer, perhaps, it could be that, I can conclude that, my guess is, maybe, I think, and I know that. So once again, here is the inference equation that you saw last week. And you use what I read plus what I know equals what I infer. So once again, what I read plus what I know equals what I infer. So what I read, I know, infer. So you use what you read, what you know, and you can infer. So what is inference? Inference is reading all the clues and making your best guess. So inference is basically just your best guess or a good guess. Inference is similar to prediction, but they are not the same. When inferring, you are using all clues to draw conclusions about what is being read. So what is an inference? Inference is just basically a good guess or your best guess. So here's your exit ticket. In the chat box, sent to me privately, I want you to answer these two questions. Number one, what is an inference? And number two, in the inference equation, what two things make up the equation? So you need to fill in these blanks. What I blank plus what I blank equals what I infer. So think of that equation. So you just have to fill in the blanks. What I blank plus what I blank equals what I infer. And if you have any questions, you can ask now.